Hi, I'm Marlow Artis. Thank you so much for visiting my blog, Tar Heel Teachers. Today is National Bosses Day, and I am joined by my boss, Dr. Frank Teal. He is the superintendent of the Cumberland County School System. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Dr. Teal, is that a title that you readily own, being a boss? What does that mean to you?
Well, I don't really think of myself as a boss, but I understand the responsibility of being a boss. So I understand that it means I'm in charge of things. But I'd rather consider myself as a servant leader, meaning that I serve the people who work with me, so I consider myself much more of a team player with the idea at the end of the time I've got to make the decision if nobody else will make the decision.
Good. So since the blog is Tar Heel Teachers, can you tell us a little bit about your role and your responsibility when you were a classroom teacher? What was that like?
I started out in the inner city of San Diego. We were a school, Memorial Junior High. It was an old building built in 1917. And there were 50 first-year teachers and a faculty of 100. It was a real turnaround school. And what happened was that San Diego gets hot only a couple times a year, and when that got hot, we'd have walkouts and riots and riot police, and the Brown Berets and the Black Panthers would all be on campus, and so we'd be on lockdown. And so people didn't last long, and so I got there, and after a while, became successful as a teacher. They were related well to the gang members, and they looked after me, and so I had a successful career. But because there were so many new teachers, I was in the classroom 2 years full time, and then my third, fourth, and fifth years, I was actually in the classroom as a teacher, and then I was the student body government advisor, and then I was a resource person. But my first year there was 7 periods. We taught 5 and did 2 periods of 1 period of prep and things. So because I was a big guy, I supervised the hallways during the walkouts and things such as that. So I had a thing, but I loved the inner city, and it taught me a lot about working with kids of poverty and working with gangs and some other things. And so I feel comfortable around gang members based on the fact that my career started with gang members.
So how long were you in the classroom? Until about 7 years?
No, actually, it was only in the classroom 5 years.
5 years.
And 3 of those were part-time, again, because I was at a inner-city school where everybody transferred out. So by the time I was at my 3rd year, I had a lot of seniority in school because so many teachers left.
Wow.
So a lot of teachers left, so I was experienced. And then my last year, because of the walkouts, we got a grant to do a project called Project People. And so my job was to try to find a way to stop the riots at the school. And I learned something there too. What happened was I did a study. I studied when the riots occurred and found out they occurred during Santa Ana's in San Diego. That's when the wind blows off the desert. So when the Santa Ana was about to come, I prepared. And every time there was a riot, they always said it started with a kid thing. It could be like you and I bumped into each other. Then we'd get into a fight, and then the gang fights would start, and then everybody would come.
Trickle effect.
So what I did was I prepared when the weather turned hot, which very seldom does. First time kids bumped in about to fight, I got the kids out of the hallway, and then I had to identify the leaders. And I took the leaders into what you call them huts here, we call them bungalows in San Diego, and I took them in and we talked until we talked through the issue. And then I got the community to put on a dinner for them to thank them for stopping it. And then I got the community to buy out mall tickets to Disneyland. And so I had a very successful year, my 1 year as the counselor for that.
Yeah. So after 5 years in the classroom, what made you decide to go into school administration?
I really wasn't going to do that, very honestly. I was going to teach for a number of years, and I was going to be a counselor. I wanted to be a counselor, and I was actually studying to be a counselor. And then I was married at the time, and my daughter was like 2 years old, and in San Diego you got raises for degrees, and I was closer to a curriculum master's than I was to a counseling master's. So I shifted over to get the counseling master's, and then one day came, I was sitting in the lounge with some people who wouldn't work after school and wouldn't do the things I was doing after school, and they were all talking about being administrators, and I said to my wife, well, if they're going to do it, why don't I get that credential too? That'd give me another bump in pay. I'm not going to be a counselor for a long time. So that's how I got the administrator credential. Then somebody came and said, we want you to be an administrator. And so I went into the central office then and became very successful with staff development. That was my big thing. And then people said, you're not going to go anywhere. And I was working on my doctorate at the University of Southern California. They said, you can't go anywhere unless you've had site experience. So then I went back to be a vice principal and a principal. And then I was happy doing that. I was going to do that forever. And then I tell people that my career went off track and I went back to central office and ended up in Florida and ended up here.
Yeah, that's exciting. What did you enjoy most about being a superintendent?
I enjoy working with people. I actually enjoy the challenge of trying to change things. Sometimes that's the most frustrating thing because you see things that need to be changed and the people around you don't see the change, or they don't want to change. And it's very easy. It's much easier for me because I'm not a part of the system my whole life. And so it's like that example where, you put the frog in the water and it boils, and the frog then boils to death, as opposed to trying. Well, I'm like the frog who got thrown into the hot water. I wasn't from here, so traditions and things weren't a part of my traditions. And so I look at some things differently. But it's not because I'm from California or lived in Florida. It's because I haven't been here, so it's not a part of my culture.
What would be the most surprising thing about your role as superintendent, that people be surprised that that's part of the things that you have to do?
There's probably not as much, you don't have as much freedom as people think. There are a lot of things in policy. I have to follow policy, so I don't have freedom there. And the budget's pretty well set. So after the budget is set, it's pretty well set. So there's not a lot of discretionary money out there. And particularly since I've been here, we've gone through a real tough time. So there's not, you just don't have as much freedom as people think. Then some people think it's glamorous. I equate the superintendency like a principal. At the end of the day, everybody goes home, and I got to take my problems home. I can't dump them off on somebody else. And that's why I respect principals, because at the end of the day, when they go home, they've got to take the problems home, and it's theirs until they come back the next day or they come back on Monday.
And part of your job is selecting principals and selecting other leaders. What do you look for when you are selecting leaders?
I look for somebody, first off, I look for somebody who I think relates to children. If they don't relate to children, then I don't see them as a principal. Then I look next to see if it's somebody who would give their all. If the principalship is going to be a 9-to-5 job, then they're not a principal material. And then I try to sort out whether they're glamorized by being a principal, because a lot of people think it's glamorous. And then I try to sort out, and then I try to see if they get in a situation, whether it's talking to faculty or PTA, whether in fact they can think, or whether they're going to lock themselves into something. So I kind of look broadly, and so I don't ask specific questions about a school in general. I try to see if the person's thinking. And so I'm not overwhelmed if they have a doctor's degree. But if they can articulate and they have a vision, then that's true. And same thing is true of teachers. When I talk to teachers, I tell people I look teachers in the eye because I can see it in the eye. If they're with children and their eyes are kind of dead, then I know that they're not having a good time. If they're with children and there's a fire in their eyes, then I know that they're a good teacher and there's potential there.
Thank you. Okay. A couple months ago, you were selected as the Regional Superintendent of the Year for the Sand Hills region. What does that mean to you?
Actually, it doesn't mean anything. I'm pleased that I was selected, but I tell people the emotion I had when they called to say that we were Broad finalists was far above the emotion.
And tell everybody about that for the ones who don't know.
We were, 2 years ago, we were named one of the 5 most improving school systems in America. And when I got that call, that really that was a feeling that being called and told I was the Regional Superintendent of the Year, it didn't compare, because to me, the Regional Superintendent of the Year, if you stick around long enough, you're going to get something like that, okay? So I wasn't overimpressed. And plus, I try not to get overimpressed with myself. I've learned a long time ago that whenever I get overimpressed with myself, somebody knocks me down pretty hard. Right. So I try not to get knocked down. But the Broad Prize was really a thing as a system. To get the recognition of the system was very significant. And I just can't describe when I got that call, because first off, I had to keep it secret, okay? And so they told me not to tell anybody. So
how long was the secret?
Just a couple days till a press conference. It wasn't forever, but I couldn't tell anybody. And so I kidded people about it. I went home and I kidded Broad about it. I didn't tell my wife, but I happened to tell my dog because I could trust him not to tell, and my wife overheard. But for 2 days, I was like in cloud 9, because I knew when it was announced, people would see Cumberland County for what it is, a great school system. So very honestly, that was more exciting for me. And It's also the reason why I never know who the teacher of the year is or the principal of the year is, because to me it's such an honor to be a part of that recognition, to have it spoiled by knowing and not being surprised like everybody else.
And
So.
you can tell, speaking of that, Miss Dunn, when she was selected, you can tell she
Yeah,
was very
yeah,
surprised.
yeah.
I think that was
Yeah,
cool.
good.
What was the process, last little comment, what was the process for being selected for regional superintendent of the year? Did you have to do any interviews, or how did that work?
No, for regional, what happens is your colleagues, there's 13 of us, and the other 12 basically got together and selected me and said I was their candidate for regional superintendent. And so that got me to the next level. So I had to do a bunch of, fill out some forms and stuff like that. So we'll see in a couple weeks whether I'm the North Carolina superintendent of the year. But so actually had to fill out something for that. So, so I'm sitting there filling out this stuff and thinking, I got better things to do with my time to fill this stuff out. But I did my best, so we'll see.
Well, we wish you the best, Dr.
Thank
Teal.
you.
We're so glad that you are with us in Cumberland County. He is my boss. He doesn't want to say it, but he is my boss, and I appreciate all the wonderful things that you do for our entire system.
Thanks for what you do, too.
Thanks.